Multiple generations of wild-born horses living at large without management or any kind of oversight, and the crisis has grown exponentially. This particular herd is actually the very first privately protected Appalachian horses. So we were able to acquire a lease on a reclaimed surface mine and relocate these horses where they were being shoved out by green energy coming in and mega industry. So now we can just live here and be happy, and the land is theirs.
Can you tell me one more time how many trees you guys have planted on this property here?
275,000 trees are where they are going to be, and we have another 200,000 in a nursery right now at the bottom of the hill waiting for their permanent home.
Wilderness is kind of a myth anyway, at least as long as humans have had culture. When folks landed over here and were like, oh my god, look at this pristine, untouched wilderness. Like, it was all being managed by indigenous folks.
I'm Richard.
I'm Lauren. And this is Sula. Daryl, Erin.
And this is Number 4 Farm with Renew Appalachia.
We're located in Martin County on a reclaimed surface mine where we're doing regenerative agriculture, community development work, planting some stuff, eating some stuff, running some sheep.
In times of economic crisis, there was a huge influx of horses being abandoned on the reclaimed mines. So folks couldn't afford to feed them, couldn't afford to maintain them, and as a last-ditch effort, just turned them loose.
Just hanging out. We got their brand new cabin that they just built up here. This is actually in a surface mine. This is a piece of coal that came from right in here. The veins are going right through this. It's, I guess, a man-made valley, and here we are. And what you guys doing? Restoring the land, bringing abundance to where it had all been taken away, and now we're all sitting here on the porch.
Yeah.
Cool.
I feel like Ricky Bobby, like I don't know what to do with my hands. And none of us know what to do with our hands. No, we always have our hands dirty.
Oh, I know.
It's just like a part of existence, right? I mean, hey, there's 1.5 million acres of reclaimed mine land in Appalachia. Let's beat the developers and the folks that want to create a bunch of Disneyland parks and actually show that there's a way that folks can grow awesome things and live in community in a way that's good for land and good for the surrounding communities. That's the goal. And benefit.
And today we're working on building platforms so that we can host people to come out and do classes and see things and be a part of the restoration projects. The first of which will be a photography course for Appalachian Legacy Initiative.
Yeah, Maureen, Foxtrot Equine on TikTok is coming out and hosting a really cool immersive photography event.
And Erin, your thing is the Appalachian Legacy Initiative?
Yes, Ally for short.
You're just out here tending to all the feral horses that are on top of these strip mines and
implementing the first in-the-field sustainability management program in Central Appalachia at scale.
Cowgirl shit.
Absolutely.
Just out here doing some Yellowstone shit.
That's what I was saying. She's like the real life Beth Dutton.
We've had this area tested as well, and but we need to have stuff retested. The way that you test for carbon in the soil is through burn tests, and that will tell you the amount of organic material. Ours was like off the charts for how much organic material was in it, which if you look, does not seem accurate. And the reason is because there was coal in the sample, and the rates that are allowable for agricultural lands are higher than what is allowed on the mine sites. So you're more likely to find more heavy metals by just like walking out into a cornfield and testing the soil than you will from most of the areas here.
Now, if you're right by like a sulfur pond or like an iron-ridden creek that goes through mine soil and is orange, that's going to be a different story.
Right.
But if you're just like looking at this land, Richard's right, the general rule of thumb is that the reclamation process requires them to actually be at a much lower rate.
When you mine the coal, you uncover pyrite, is like one of the waste materials, and when rain mixes with the pyrite, it releases sulfuric acid, and that is what is going into these runoffs.
They don't need to use a bunch of chemicals to separate out the coal.
Like they mostly just use lime and water.
Water and lime, yeah. But the thing is that because so much of the mineralization, deep mineralization in the mountain is also released, you end up with these like high conductivity waterways and things like that. So So it's not necessarily like poison's introduced, it's just that
Poison is
exposing.
released.
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't.
Exactly.
And then
And that's a
concentrated
cleanup of
because
it
the
too,
water
like, use
washes it into
selenium.
Mhm.
Yeah,
waterways.
like
Can you tell me one more time how many trees you guys have planted on this property here?
275,000 trees are where they are going to be, and we have another 200,000 in a nursery right now at the bottom of the hill waiting for their permanent home.
Yep, so going from compacted soil and an invasive autumn olive dominant environment to a mixed deciduous native forest.
Dog, that is so wild. On what, 275,000 trees, give or take, and then more on about 7,000 acres of reclaimed strip mine here in Central Appalachia.
Goal is 1 million trees.
Yeehaw!
Do it.
They support the trees.
And all right, that's Lucy. She's the literal black sheep of her family. She's a tough lady.
He's the boss.
She's really the boss. She, if you notice, her role in the little flock is to like keep the perimeter clear. I don't know how they elected her, probably because she's kind of she's a bully, sorry. She's a bully, and otherwise like the other sheep would go crazy with her. But so they normally don't come this far sometimes. They're here because they like being near us. I like to think because they like us, but it might also be because we feed them a lot of corn. We have a mushroom inoculation project going on here, which is basically, it's like one of the simplest forest farming methods, and it's super fun, especially if you like mushrooms, which I feel like more and more people are coming to realize how awesome mushrooms are. But basically you drill holes in these logs, and you have to make sure to pick like companion wood species for the type of spores you have. And then you inoculate, so you inject spores into each of these holes and cover them with some wax so that other like bacteria don't come in. And you can actually see like on the edge of these logs, this white stuff that's coming is a really good sign. That means the mycelium is starting to eat the log. And then the mushroom is going to be just like the fruiting body of that. So once they've been sitting for like 6 months to a year, there will be one day where it rains, and then all of a sudden we'll come out and there will just be like oyster mushrooms all over this.
Heck yeah.
Which is so cool. Such a cool way to make food. And we actually just won an agroforestry grant, like a small amount of money, but we're going to use it primarily to like do this times 10. Yeah, it's definitely just like folks that grew up around here, like when the mining stopped, they of course use these lands to like ride and hunt, and a lot of that is like a beautiful way of connecting. And then, but then in a lot of cases too, folks would like dump a ton of trash or like spotlight deer and over harvest. So a big part of what like Richard and I are up to is kind of introducing like, you know, like living here in a way that's hopefully cultivating the land, and that creates opportunities for folks to engage with it again, but in a way that doesn't like create a mess of it. Which isn't to say that's how everybody's related to it. Like folks have owned cattle up here, folks have grown stuff up here, folks have herbs up here. So you get the whole 9 yards when it's kind of like a free-for-all. This is black cohosh. It reproduces rhizomatically too, so if you ever harvest this, if you're able to like even just break off a little bit of it and replant it, it'll sprout up anew from that root, so you can harvest without like killing off a population.
Yep.
Like a ginger, turmeric type stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
Ginseng!
There's more and more efforts to develop nursery stock for ginseng production and other production like this, because agroforestry and forest farming are growing, which is rad because it means people won't cut down as many forests, hopefully. We have a tree nursery down at the bottom we can show you too.
Well, there's a bunch of like half American, half Chinese chestnuts that are now 20,000 of them that are planted on one of the other sites.
Yeah, and a bunch of hazelnut. That's another thing is like we have a lot of those deciduous trees that are like ideal for forest health, but maybe aren't gonna be productive for people in the sense of like they'll be able to make a living off of it. So we try to include things like, well, can we include a bunch of planting of like edible or nut producing trees? Because then in those models you are still reforesting, but you're also having it be like a potential source of well-being for the folks.
Yeah.
And food.
Oh yeah.
Needs to eat.
But basically the vision here, there's a lot of invasives here, particularly like Sericea lespedeza and autumn olive, multiflora rose. These like a lot of the stuff that we're seeing as we're walking around. And the sheep love these things. Example demonstrating this on a strip mine, but is to graze large amounts of sheep on the land. And so they eat the invasives. And then it also is a form of like climate smart grazing where right? They eat, they poop, that adds compost and helps the soil. Even their movement helps to decompact the soil a bit. And in the process of doing all of those, you also are now creating jobs because there are shepherds, and you're creating a product because you have lamb that you can sell. There's a growing market for lamb in the United States because of immigrant populations who still want that, and there's not enough supply of it. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And then it's also really good for the sheep because like your biggest concerns with the sheep are usually like parasites and hoof care. The benefit with parasites here is Sericea lespedeza is naturally a dewormer and like is anti-parasitic. So they don't get parasites very much. And then if you have tons and tons of acreage in order to put them on, you can rotate their grazing so frequently that they're never in the same pasture when the like parasitic eggs start to produce, which is like 4-ish days. You can just move them every 4 days, and there's enough area so then they don't get the issues from the parasites.
Just mimicking nature.
Yep.
They were always moving.
Yep.
Roaming around.
Yep. Same like with the buffalo and the elk and everything. Same idea. And then the other one too is the soil's really rocky. But if you get a hardier breed of sheep like Katahdins, then you actually minimize the need to do much hoof care at all either, because like the rocks are naturally grading away at the hoofs, so you don't even have to do much trimming. We went to Greg Judy's farm in Missouri and met him, and he does a ton of this stuff with sheep, and you know, he moves them all the time, and I don't think he uses literally any wormers or medications or does any hoof care at all, and he just moves them. And because they're hair sheep, you don't really have to shear them. The area that we had fenced in up here was because of testing out this model and seeing like how they will eat the invasives and how they will do, and it turned out really well.
So by no means do we have like all the answers, nor can we be everywhere. And so our real goal is to demonstrate like proof of concepts of things so that more farmers and folks that want to do restoration work or like create land-based businesses in Appalachia, or like have their own family farms and want to like try out these different things but want to like see it done. We have land, we have community. That's kind of what we want to see happen too, because then we get to do this with a lot of cool people.
Well, and then I looked at like a couple of your videos too, and like for instance this idea of the like bringing back some of the wild seeds and everything that. So these were originally a roadside cushaw that Mark Kidd, who's like big in seed projects, brought here, and we planted a bunch of them, and they did so well they outcompeted each other and didn't produce any fruit. But when we moved a bunch of stuff back here, I guess a seed ended up in the mixture, and this cushaw is from a single vine that goes all the way across and now has 2 giant cushahs on it. And these guys are going to be broken up, and the seeds are going to be distributed to other people to let them go replant cushaw like this. And
it's grown in like the rocky old mine soil. It's just pretty much rocks and maybe some clay, and you have food.
Yep.
All right, do you want to have a fun time?
Absolutely.
Can I film you? Do you trust me with your little camera?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I didn't come here for a bad time.
Take this, and you're gonna say, "Come home," and they're gonna just follow you like a shepherd, and we're gonna fill these like black containers for them. Okay. So you say, "Come home," and you walk to each of these, and you dump half. They're like, "Ah, God." It's not, that's why we split them, so that it's not just like total chaos. We want to keep moving more and more to a full grass-fed model, but this was like impassable before, and like an invasive species. And actually we just cleared out, you can see a bunch of what they'd eaten through. These were all full leaf, and they ate back all this autumn olive and vines and rose.
That's all this stuff right here.
Yep, so this was like all thicketed, and then they just like slowly chomped away. So this is Simba.
Hey, Simba.
Yeah.
Friendly now.
And that's Pongo.
Pongo?
Yeah.
Hey, Pongo.
They're very sweet. They just have a job to do, and they apparently do it.
Surely.
So they're both Great Pyrenees Anatolian Shepherd mixes that were donated to us by Karen Tucker and Sexpa. I think there's like a big myth in the homesteading social media world of like, we're just two beautiful people who just figured it all out. And actually it takes like a ton of community and mistake making and often help to do stuff. So I like to always say like, we did build this, but it was alongside like a lot of folks helping us out that we're very lucky to have in our life. Including our Paul, whose name is Tommy Markham. He sort of adopted us. Maybe he was afraid we'd fall off the mountain. But he used to be the boss of all these mines. And now he's like the most active person in the project when it comes to like planting trees and making them better. So it's a pretty cool arc. He also knows this land so well, which is an incredible resource. Wilderness is kind of a myth anyway, at least as long as humans have had culture that's land-based, which is humans having culture. When folks landed over here and we're like, oh my god, look at this pristine, untouched wilderness. Like, it was all being managed by indigenous folks, right? Like what you were seeing was a product of like human, you know this, co-evolution, right? So
Amazon
like,
rainforest being man-made. And
on one hand, you're like, the idea that like humans need to be completely out. On the other hand, like the earth exists to be productive for us, and so everything just has to be like comfortable for humans, monocropped so we can grab from it. Like there's definitely a spectrum there, right? So like there's some way of relating where we're like, hey, we're part of an ecosystem. We're kind of already involved. We can't really get out of this mess. So can we like sustain our care and evolve, continue to evolve, especially like when we're working on a landscape like this. You come in and you have this like fantasy of returning it to some state. But like there was a mountain where we are right now. That would have taken millions of years to erode to this level. And that would have been tons of organic matter coming down the way. Like we can't like snap our fingers or plant one thing and have it go back. So how can we meet this place where it's at? Kind of find ways to be resourceful with what's already growing here. And then like slowly, instead of demonizing one thing or the other, like introduce more and more things that are productive for the land and productive for people. Because if people can't survive, they're not going to keep taking care of it, right? Like they have to then go to a city to make money and feel sad. Not all of them. Some people are happy in cities.
this is going to heat me for the winter.
For real.
What's going on, folks? I'm out here with Feral Erin up in eastern Kentucky on top of one of the reclaimed strip mines that she manages all of the feral horses in the area. Basically, we've been driving all over these different parts of Kentucky, and it's probably all the same town, but it seems like we're going forever because we're on these crazy bumpy roads, and it's a pretty good time. And basically all these horses have just been living here since like when they used them in the mines and when people used to ride them.
So these guys are generationally wild born. They stem from both the early 20s, when the movement to switch more towards machinery and away from using horses every day, they basically just turned them loose. And then you had more horses being added through like early agricultural practices when surface mines very first started being reclaimed. So you would have guys that would have, say, 10 horses. They'd turn them loose to free graze because this region has very little pasture. It's all hillside and just not great for agriculture. So, but the trouble with that, when you turn 10 horses loose, you may catch 5, and the next year you may only catch 2. And then one day that old man dies and is gone, and then all of those horses are just there. So they've been breeding ever since and populating ever since. And then in times of economic crisis, there was a huge influx of horses being abandoned on the reclaimed mines. So folks couldn't afford to feed them, couldn't afford to maintain them, and as a last-ditch effort, just turned them loose. So now what we have is multiple generations of wild-born horses living at large without management or any kind of oversight. And the crisis has grown exponentially over, just our lifetimes and, the past generation. And that's where we kind of came in and stepped up and began the first at-scale in the field management program for the horses. And then this particular herd is actually the very first privately protected Appalachian horses. So we were able to acquire a lease on a reclaimed surface mine and relocate these horses where they were being shoved out by green energy coming in and mega industry. So now they can just live here and be happy, and the land is theirs.
Heck yeah. What would you say is like the biggest challenge that you've had coming up and doing all this, whether it's like the locals, the corporations, just managing wild horses that obviously are not trained until you come and start nurturing them? Like, what would you say is like some of the biggest things?
I think the biggest hurdle we've had by and large is getting it out there, and there's been so much misinformation about the wild horses or feral herds, technically they're feral, in the region, that we're not starting from zero. We're having to backtrack and, you know, do a lot of data research and all of these things to basically back what our philosophies are, to be able to prove that what we're doing is not only effective, sustainable, and everything, but also needed. Because most folks, like when you talk about the feral and wild horses, there's been a lot of misinformation that every horse on the surface mines once was a domestic animal. And it's just simply not the case. And that's very detrimental to getting these horses help, because if, you know, the bigger animal welfare organizations or wild horse advocate organizations just have it in their head that these are domestic horses, so it doesn't fall under their, you know, category. So basically just finding the true history, working with the locals to find out the heritage and history of every site and every population, to get that out there and what we're doing out there, and kind of set the story straight and take the time it took to get a full understanding of what's actually happening here.
And they're over here fertilizing the land, grazing the pastures, taking away some of the less desirable species by making the ground better, and new things come up. Wildflowers and all. And so this land here all used to be a mountaintop, right? This wasn't flat at all, and now it's as flat as you can see until you go over that crest, and then it drops down and it looks like it used to, which is very interesting. So that right there you're saying is a mine break, where basically the water goes down and it just starts splitting the land until it...
Yeah, because this is all exposed rock, so when the water comes down, this should have just been a mountain. And where this spot has this shelving, it basically just erodes all the soil content, and it's going right between the limestone shelf and everything.
So
and then at that point, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and then starts literally breaking.
I'll probably record a video of like how it happened over there, and the land just like slides away.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a pit.
So that
this
goes.
isn't even like that big compared to some of them.
There's even a piece of coal.
Oh yeah.
Right in there. That's where they get it from.
That's pretty.
That's like 30 feet.
Holy! You can take home all the coal you could ever burn.
Can you light it with a lighter, or it needs to be like really high temperatures?
Kind of high. I normally will throw like a big brick of it into the fire, and then it'll keep going, and then you just kind of add, but it creates a really nice like base.
Yeehaw. So basically all that stuff on the left is what it naturally looked like, and this was the side of a mountain, and then they just completely flattened it. And what they did after they flattened it, she was telling me, is they needed to push all the toxic sludge and debris, and what they ended up doing is pushing it into the hollers where all the people lived, and then they had to walk miles to get out of their house. So that's what we've been up against. That's what she's been up against in the locals of Kentucky. Nothing is flat in this region unless it's a strip mine or the bottom of a river. Oh, right in the coal pit. That's a crazy view.
That's why when we were over there, I was like, I know the spot, bro. I know the spot.
Oh, we got an O'Neill high bush northern blueberry growing right here. I consider that the north. We're in the mountains. It's cold. North and south, north and south. Sorry to all the Kentuckians. You're not northern. So all that stuff out in front, this was all a strip mine. The land goes all the way to over there, and over there, pretty much everything you can see is all the mine. That way, we've been driving for like an hour and a half, still on the same property. Yeehaw. That's rough riding. Sheesh. How long have we been doing this? Like 2 hours on this road?
Probably.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, it'll be real quick. About 2 hours. We've been up here 2 hours. Time's not real anyway. One of my old camps is up here. In the pines.
So like people will come out here just to like mess around with the horses and stuff.
Not here so much yet. I'm not sure people have really realized that they're here.
Yeah, it's a long drive.
And it's kind of isolated. Like there is some four-wheeler traffic.
Hello. Howdy.
Hello.
How y'all doing?
Pretty good. About you?
These your horses?
Kind of.
Yeah. You adopt them? You adopt them? Or?
No, I run a horse rescue for all the horses.
So right here, this is how you plant blueberries 101. You got to get a big old bucket of road apples, and then, as Erin likes to say, you just make a nice shrine. You do a crystal grid around the blueberry mulch ring, and
It's effective.
that's how you grow the berries. I had to put shoes on because last time I was around horses, they stepped in my foot.